listening to Soberroso, a show dedicated to alcoholics, addicts, survivors of abuse, overcomers of great tragedies, and those of us with mental health issues too. Each week, we invite guests and listeners from around the world to listen in as we have casual conversations with regular people like you and me who've, against all odds, turned their lives around. If you're a family member of someone suffering from alcoholism or addiction, a newcomer or old-timer, or sober curious, this show is for you. Join us now on the Soberroso podcast with your host, Dora Gosselin, in sharing our passion for recovery.
Hello, beautiful peeps. My name is Dora, and I am your grateful host of the Soberroso podcast. If you have not joined us before, welcome. If this is your first time finding us, we are so glad you're here. Mike, are you joining us from Austin, Texas?
Yes, ma'am. All the way from Austin.
All right. Did you grow up there?
Well, I grew old here. How about that?
That works.
I moved here in January of 2000 from Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
But, it's funny because I'm originally from the South, born and raised in New Orleans and moved about quite a bit. And when I graduated, from college with a degree in design and art history, I stayed in Atlanta to further my, learning at a trade school. And just as I was about to graduate, I got recruited to Portland to work for an advertising agency.
Okay.
So that pretty much, dictated the rest of my life. And I came to Austin from Portland. So
awesome. Okay. Well, I have quite a few friends in Austin, some guests some guests that have joined me from Austin and from Texas. And the friends that I have, it sounds like there's a big move going towards Texas. Like a lot of Americans are moving that way.
There's a huge draw for technology. A lot of people are moving their headquarters from Silicon Valley out here for whatever reason. Well, I mean, we all know that it's cheaper, but it's kind of the way of the world, right?
Right, of course.
If you can conduct business with, I think, a little bit more of a mindful financial perspective, well, you're going to move it there. So that's right. Kind of where we're at.
Awesome.
Lots of people from Cali coming out.
All right.
Lots of people from Cali coming out.
All right.
Are you in Cali or no?
No. I am a Canadian and I live in Mexico, but I am in Canada now for the whole summer visiting family. I just became a grandma for the first time.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
that's
thank
so awesome.
you. It is so exciting. Like I'm over the moon, and to be doing it sober is like just a blessing, it's incredible. Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, we learn after a while being sober how much we fucking missed out, right?
Yes.
Sorry
true.
for the language there.
No. Hey, I welcome it all. We're real people here, and that's fine. But yeah, this whole becoming a grandma, because I live in Mexico, I'm going to be called an abuelita Dorita.
Very cool. I love it.
But my daughter has been married for a couple of years. She's 28 or 29. And I was a teenage mom, so my pregnancies were not planned, and I struggled a lot. So it is just a blessing to be able to
say a 29-year-old. You look like a 29-year-old.
Thank you. I was a teenage mom. But yeah, it's wonderful to, I was there for the whole labor, the whole delivery. I watched the
Oh,
baby take
wow,
her
that's great.
first breath of air. I cut her umbilical cord, and
So cool.
I've just been there by her side, and it's just amazing to be in my present mind, in
Yeah.
my feelings, sober, and watching my daughter be a fantastic mother with her and her husband too. It's just it's a gift of sobriety. It's they just keep coming and they keep getting better.
Yeah, if gratitude had a pinnacle, maybe that would be it. But
That's
it
right.
only gets up from there, right? It only keeps
Yes.
getting better. So
Yeah, it does keep getting better.
it's great.
All right, Micah, I would love if you could tell us a little bit about your background and your story. And why don't we start with what made you decide or feel that maybe your drinking and drugging was causing a problem, or it was too much? What was going on in your life?
Well, I think it's just like any other story. And not to diminish my own. And by the way, I feel like everybody has their own individual reason in their own individual story. They all converge to a point where you've had it, you had enough. You feel like you've lost complete control. For me, I had to hit rock bottom a couple times in order to sort of fully understand that, this is the kind of thing that I just can't go on with simply. And it really boiled down to that. It's realizing that, something that will only kill me in the end.
Now, did you have outside family and friends telling you like you're stepping over the line, or was it all an internal battle of dealing with blackouts like I did and thinking just, so much remorse and shame, doing it again and again and again?
I think for most of us, really, the battle is from within. Yeah, there were people that would say, "Hey, man, don't you think you're drinking too much?" It was quite sporadic, though. It only came from a few people. And just having an advertising background, it was completely socially acceptable to go over the top. There was a drink cart that come around at 2 o'clock on Friday.
Woo! Dangerous.
Well, on top of that, you're flying to all these different places, and you're working, just incredible hours that are just, and so booze, just kind of like flows, and not to mention other things. And it's really sort of, the cliche is right. When you're in that kind of business, they do everything they can to make it as comfortable, quote unquote, as possible, so that you can, put in those 12, 14, hour days without whining and complaining, so they help you along, numbing it down,
Of course. And you're probably, entertaining clients and celebrating deals, and yeah, the way of the world.
Well, it really is. And it's a rat race, and it's full of stress. But, ultimately it's my fault, and that's part of the ownership of becoming sober, is saying, you know what, I didn't have to do any of that.
Right.
And realizing that, life is better without it all, actually. You know what I mean? It's
I do.
And, I've had an amazing career. I started out as an art director when I was 26 years old. So I mean, that's in itself, kind of a big milestone. So I was thrown into the fire at an early age. So I got accustomed to, I was a stoner.
Yeah.
I took my first job in Portland, and that's there, and the weather sucked, so it was a reason to go into a pub and drink all day. And honestly, I think anybody, regarding any situation, ultimately has, control over a situation, and it's easy to sort of blame But, a lot of becoming sober is accepting responsibility for what you've done and what you've done in the past, owning it, coming to terms with your own truth, and that's kind of the whole purpose of step work. Whether you do it or not, I think ultimately you do have to begin to learn and own some of the things that you've done wrong. And
yeah, and I think a lot of, well, for my situation anyways, is not only owning what we did in the past and when we were drinking and when we were using, but also for me, I think about the second year I've gone into more of an area where I'm learning to accept myself, not only own up to it, but accept that I can't change that, and trying to make my life better and moving forward, becoming the best version of Dora, but also being able to forgive myself and let that go, because I held on to that. I held on to shit I did when I was like 5 years old, like stuff I did when I was 12, that's how I was working my steps, was like, well, I said this to, it's like way back there, like being able to not only own what we did, recognize our behaviors, our old patterns that no longer serve us, but to also be able to forgive ourselves and move forward instead of just holding on to it.
It's a spiritual awakening. You figure out like how to come to terms with yourself, love yourself for who you are. And by the way, when you reach that point of sobriety and you do sort of begin to, take ownership for a lot of the things, it's easier to love other people equally,
Oh yeah.
which is something, after a while, I didn't have a concept of anything but me, I was like a selfish ass son of a bitch. And it was the last 10 years of my, drinking, was really all about me. And it was even difficult to have any kind of relationship, so and that was because, I was just self-medicating, and it came to a point where I just wanted out. I didn't know a way out. I was caught in a rut in between my front door and the front door at work. That's all I knew. I was functioning all the way up until like the last, maybe couple of months that I was working. I just had it, I stopped going to work. I started ghosting. I even stopped calling in sick, for crying out loud.
Wow. Not even doing that.
And it was really, because, I felt like, the world owed me something, and I wasn't. And part of it too was, I was overextended myself to the point where I had a lot of resentment and animosity, and I was there to fuck the system, So I was going to collect a paycheck and not show up.
Right.
But at the same time, I was really under, and that was really sort of the breaking point, where I realized that life was completely unmanageable. My house was being remodeled. I was living in a life of shambles. The remodel kind of echoed what I was feeling inside. Everything was just so like discombobulated, to the point where I was like, I just didn't recognize myself anymore. And that was the boiling point. And you're just so grateful that, I had that realization. It was that tap on the shoulder that, you know what, you got to break out of this cycle. Otherwise you're just going to like continue to spiral.
Yeah.
And, it takes time and it takes tries. I see people struggle, they continue to struggle. And, sometimes they just don't quite, reach that point where, it is an awakening in a way. I hate to say it that way, but,
no, it's true. It's a life change. It's a major life change.
It is.
So awakening is perfect.
But there is that point in time when, you may start feeling comfortable after being sober a while.
Mm.
That's why the cliches, those mottos, one day at a time,
Yes.
really rings true. And I don't call it cliches anymore. I call it truths. Because it really is. If you like live in the present moment, you have a lot better chance of getting through that day and into the next day. I made a post on Soberpress on my Instagram that was just for today, be sober,
Yeah.
and then repeat.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was actually inspired by a video that somebody had posted about someone reflecting on their father, who was a very, very wise person in recovery. And he was just like, if I can make it through the day, that'll be it. I'm sober for today, and that's it.
That's
And
right.
then repeat that the next day. So that's really sort of the crux of what that is what inspired that post. But, it's like, I think everybody has a different journey. You have to respect each other's journey.
Agreed.
Whatever works for you, keep going down that path and make it happen. It's one of those things that, there's a lot of people pound the big book.
We are not affiliated, nor do we represent AANA or any of the anonymous programs in any way, shape, or form. However, some of our discussions and guest stories may contain references to these organizations. At Soberoso, we celebrate all paths to sobriety.
I do like AA, and I think that's a perfect path for me.
Yeah.
Others seek other ways, which are great. I always hear is like, well, is AA kind of a cult?
Well, you know what? That's what I started my recovery in AA as well. And
yeah.
I thought that myself as well. It was like, whoa, like I was just flabbergasted that people were sharing like all these secrets that I've been so ashamed of. And people are talking about blacking out and they did this. And I was like, how are they saying this out loud in front of so many people? And but then getting into the steps, I started seeing this God word, and I was like, okay, these people know me, like they're talking about the shit I did, but yeah, is this some like backdoor to religion or a cult or, so I think that's a common thought. But as
some people I feel like are awakened on a very spiritual level. And I think there's the power of knowing that there's someone above you that ultimately has control, and recognizing that. And I think it's great that you recognize that higher power.
Oh yeah.
Whatever it may be, because I feel like everybody has a different version. In rooms, I heard a guy talk about how his teddy bear was his power.
Oh yes, I've heard many things too. The doorknob, the Pacific Ocean.
Honestly, if that is sort of your guiding light, fucking follow it. Because if it's one of those things that you realize that you're like a speck in the universe, and you're embracing your own sort of humility, that's ultimately what it is. It's like it's knowing that we're here, we're going to continue to learn, and we're going to continue to try and be better people.
That's right.
That's it.
Now, you did touch down that I just want to reiterate that there are many different paths to sobriety and to recovery, and there are many different levels and stages and depths of addiction and alcoholism. We're not all the same. We didn't all wake up and have a drink first thing in the morning. We didn't all black out. There's so many different spectrum of so many different forms of alcoholism and addiction. So of course we're going to need different recovery, and whatever works for you. I mean, if you're drowning in shame like I was, if you're waking up hungover again and you're just starting to drink again because you don't want to feel that way and you're stuck in that cycle of insanity, there is no right or wrong to sobriety. Exactly what you said, Mike. One day at a time. You know, we can't go on. In the beginning, when I got sober, you know, I was like, what am I going to do at Halloween? What am I going to do at New Year's? My whole body was in anxiety and projecting and the what ifs but in recovery, that one day at a time, not only just not drinking today, not only just not picking up a drug today, but just what can I accomplish today on my to-do list? What can I do today? Just today.
And it releases pressure.
Sure does.
Past and pressure of the future.
That's right.
So when you do live in the moment and in the present, there is no pressure of anything else surrounding you. And I also want to add that, you know, any kind of addiction is really a symptom of something deeper. And I think a lot of people need to recognize the fact that it's boils down to mental health. And, you know, I feel like everybody has their own internal struggle. There's trauma involved, you know, PTSD, there's the way they were raised, the environment they were raised in. You know, I was fortunate actually to had a very solid childhood with solid parents. It's just, you know, it's me. It's the way I internalize stuff. You know, it's like maybe I'm a little too, like, you know, I don't know,
sensitive or whatever. But I agree. You know, I also had a very
but yeah.
I also had a very good upbringing. But, you know, yeah, it's perspective or what I couldn't talk about it. Even as a child, I was even though I had a good upbringing and a good solid home and good values, and my parents didn't drink or drug, the way I perceived things and kept everything inside, I really lacked the skills to communicate, I think.
Yeah. And, you know, I was a kid who internalized everything. And I grew up to be an adult that continued to internalize everything. I have that nasty fucking hamster likes to run around while I'm trying to sleep, you know, so yes. I'm always thinking about stuff, and it makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
Please hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to the Soberoso podcast and help us normalize conversations around alcoholism and addiction recovery. You can join us on Instagram and Facebook at Soberoso.
I feel like in the end, everybody has their own internal struggle, and it's coming to terms with that. And it's not necessarily one bullet in the chamber that's going to, like, you know, take care of your addiction. It's a lot. It's several. I've described it as an octopus with multiple tentacles. That, you know, is, you have, you know, I think a lot of different prongs that need to be sort of in use. These tools are the ones that I think, you know, will help you through. And, you know, I have a counselor that I talk to every other week. Perfect. You know, lately, the month of August has been just especially tough on me. There's a lot of noise going on. You know, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, when it rains, it pours, you know, and the support of, you know, the outside community, having a sponsor, having close friends, having a counselor, you know, these are sort of your lifelines. And also, you know, having the ability to, you know, have distractions and be able to pour yourself into a passion project. For me, it's Soberpress, you know.
Yeah.
Even though what I do is kind of maybe on the quiet side, you know, I'm the kind of person who's a little bit more introspective and thoughtful, hopefully, about, you know, everything, the stories that I put out there. I feel like, you know, is there any value in something where somebody can be intimate with words and be quiet with it and be able to soak it all in? it's about the idea that, sometimes you do need some intimacy, and you need to have the ability to quietly sort of soak in, inspiration, and the idea that you're not alone. Sometimes, inspiration strikes in moments where you need that quiet time. And then that's kind of one of the reasons why I just love words, and I love to stick to the words. So if I can quietly sort of, break through that way.
How did the conception of Soberpress come about? I can gather because of your advertising background, but why don't you paint us a little picture of your conception of you being a sober man to the Soberpress?
So Soberpress was born out of COVID, unfortunately, and fortunately. It's one of those things that it was me trying to navigate sort of the idea that now we have to wear masks, smiles went away. Now that we have to hole up in house, we're no longer going to meetings. How do I maintain my sanity? A lot of us addicts are at the height of our addiction. We're isolated from everybody else, and here we are involuntarily like thrown back into that situation. How are we not to drink? How are we not to cope in a way that's, my aim was to try and cope in a way that's positive, reaching back for, the old way. And to me, I had a girlfriend at the time, and I kind of ran the idea by her, and she's like, well, yeah, maybe you should start an Instagram. And she encouraged me to do that. And which really kind of helped me, because it really sort of allowed me to realize, that there is an amazing community, and there's a need actually for this kind of thing. And, Eliza is a librarian and writer. She was one of the first, she was the first to contribute. And it caught me off guard when she reached out. I knew I had already begun setting up the website, and when she reached out, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yes.
From then on out, it was like momentum.
Yeah.
I was able to get a story out pretty frequently after that, and consistently. And, I've actually, in the last couple of years, have, been able to maintain, a fairly good frequency.
Awesome.
I do have some dead space. I'm going to actually ask you for your story now.
Yes, and I am looking forward to contributing my story. And I get the Soberoso started in the pandemic as well. And yeah, I was born, I didn't even have 1 week of downtime of I'm bored. What am I going to do? I jumped right into it. And it was awesome. It was a higher power thing, because in my early recovery, I started making t-shirts, because I realized that I was promoting all these bad messages in my own recovery. I was wearing stuff from the red light district, my favorite beer, my favorite whiskey. It was like everything around me. My house was like signs on the wall. It's wine o'clock somewhere. Like I had all these subliminal messages that I started to recognize when I got sober. It was like, wow, like I have it everywhere. So I started designing t-shirts in Mexico, and, that gave a positive message. And I decided that I had thought about podcasting. So I got the name to get Instagram and a website, Facebook, all with the name Soberoso. And I was kind of just sitting on it for a couple months, maybe, before the pandemic hit. And then when the pandemic hit, I jumped into it. Like I didn't have any downtime of rest or relaxation. Like I just went into productivity and learning and growing. So So I get where you're coming from. We have very similar stories with bringing our sober message to the world.
Yeah. So it's been super helpful. It got me through the pandemic because I had just quit my job. I mean, I did, honestly, when I met my sponsor in rehab, he agreed to be a temporary sponsor, and I've never been able to shake him since. Or
Nice.
He's not been able to shake me, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But honestly, I kind of went for it, I was sick and tired of my job. So I quit my job.
Awesome.
And all of a sudden I'm like, now what?
Right.
And, I had always had like really good finances, and I had saved money, and, so I wasn't like afraid of striking out on my own. But then the pandemic hit, and there was like high anxiety about, holy shit, I don't have a job.
Right.
I was doing small projects for people, freelance, but they weren't like legit projects quite yet. And that didn't come until later. So it actually, this endeavor helped me sort of project a little more energy into the things that I absolutely love to do, the creative side of me. Yeah. And also made me walk away feeling like I'm making a contribution. And part of, actually doing some of these things is that feeling that you're actually paying it forward somehow. And there are people that reach out and say, might comment, oh, I needed to see this, or, or whatever it is, but it pays off in little tiny increments. But, much to the chagrin of my sponsor, I jumped into a relationship, it was not even 6 months into my sobriety.
Wait a minute. You found a relationship in the pandemic?
Before that was
okay.
And, it was one of those things that, I don't know, I kind of went a little bit nuts with this freedom that I felt. And I know I did all the things wrong, and I think I paid for it in the long run. But what was nice is I had always been able to maintain my sobriety.
Awesome.
But it's always been a struggle. There are things, and I understand why now. It's like these life changes create, stress, and they create, sort of the urge to drink.
If you are serious about getting clean and sober, and you are ready to make big changes in your life, join us at Recovery in Paradise, where we are offering a 90-day inpatient program for men in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. We have a full English-speaking support staff, ready to help you overcome your alcoholism and addictions. Start your recovery in the tropical destination of Puerto Vallarta with us. Visit our website for more info at www.recoveryinparadisepv.com.
Yes.
And luckily, I felt like I sort of found my wave to surf it all out, and that was coming up with Soberpress and actually following through with it. And it's a daily endeavor, and, there are days when I'm so busy working, on my freelance projects that I simply don't have time, and I feel so damn guilty for not making one post that day or missing it for an entire week,
I totally get it. And I just took the whole month of August off of podcasting. I podcasted for 2 years, and very consistently every week. And I had this structure, and here I am talking about mental health, talking about addiction, talking about our triggers and not overdoing it. And it's like finally I was like, I have to take some of my own medicine here. Like I need a break. I deserve a break. Why am I putting all this pressure on myself, when I am doing a great service, and like I would feel guilty, like, I gotta get this done, or gotta, somehow save the world or help make the world a better place. But in actuality, there's 100 episodes up there. Somebody could listen to something You have a ton of blogs, a lot of information. So we also have to practice what we're preaching and take care of ourselves and take
That's
that
right.
downtime.
That's exactly right. You nailed it. And, self-care actually does go a long way to sort of take a break before you break. And it's one of those things that if you do that, it gives you a chance to reflect and retool. And when you do that, you come back even better than you were before, I feel.
Yeah.
And it's always been the case for me. It's like, well, you know, on the tail end of a big job, and I take a few days break, and I come back at it with a lot of fervor, you know, like one of those things that it's like, holy shit, I feel like a new man.
That's
you know,
awesome.
It helps, it works, you know, it's like you have to take a break.
Yes.
You have to take the time to reflect. And, you know, I think in the end, it only makes you better.
Awesome, Mike. Well, this has been just fantastic getting to know you and getting to know you in person via video.
Yes.
Finally. And I love that, you know, we both started under the same kind of circumstances, our passion projects for sobriety. That's so cool.
Yes, for sure. We're so worth it, you know, and in the end, a lot of us who do recover and actually become better people and live even more productive lives, you know, is proof to that. You know, we are worth it. And, you know, there's so many within the community, and it's almost like, how do we draw like a little bit more, you know, people, I think, from the outside in, so that they do begin to understand sort of, you know, it's like, we're truly, you know, a group of people that is really in tune to what's going on within, and we're in tune to trying to better ourselves. There's sometimes I make a joke about why can't there be AA for regular people? There's so many shitty people out there.
I get it. Like everybody should do the 12 steps, whether they're an addict or not. Like they should bring that stuff into high schools.
Like you know, there's, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, you need a little dose of humility, buddy.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Exactly.
Bring yourself back down to earth.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. And I also sometimes, you know, have to remind myself, if I'm come across a situation or with another person, it's like, and they're not in recovery, you know, I have to remind myself, like, that person doesn't have a program. They don't have a design for living. They don't have the steps. Like, you know, I'm going at it going like, yeah, just calm down, you know, one day at a time, remove your ego from it's not worth it. And I'm like, but that person, ultimately, they have no idea, you know, that was me, you know, just living from fire to fire.
Yeah, I was that way too. And, you know, honestly, it's like, you don't have to be, I think, in full-blown addiction at all to be a shitty person.
That's right.
And I think a lot of the people that look in from the outside don't really understand, by comparison, how sometimes, and I say sometimes, you know, I hate casting a wide net, but sometimes people can just be just as selfish and self-centered.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you everybody for being with us here today on the Soberoso podcast. I've enjoyed having Mike from Soberpress on. We do recover.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you are struggling out there today and you are just listening to this message, please don't give up on yourself. Mike and I were just like you. We were in active addiction and alcoholism, knowing that our lives could be better. And we have turned that page and are living proof that we do recover. So don't give up.
You're worth it. You're listening to Soberoso, sharing our passion for recovery.
that subscribe button wherever you're listening to the Soberoso podcast and help us normalize conversations around alcoholism and addiction recovery. You can join us on Instagram and Facebook at Soberoso. You are not alone, and we do recover. Wear and share your passion for recovery with our His and Hers merch. Visit us at www.soberoso.com.